2022 City of Broussard Council meeting. Please silence your cell phones, and if anyone from the audience would like to make a comment on an item listed on the agenda, please fill out the blue card located in the back of the room and turn it into our city clerk. Each speaker will be given a maximum of 5 minutes. Please rise for the pledge. Councilman Garrett, you lead us in a prayer.
We, the members of the Broussard City Council, beg of thee, Almighty God, to enlighten our minds so our work will be just and fair in all things. Give us the courage and strength to fulfill our duties according to the laws of the land, and fulfilling also thy holy will on earth and in heaven. Through Christ our Lord, amen.
Welcome to our budget hearing. Item 2.1, the 2021-2022 amended budget. And item 2.2, the 2022-2023 proposed budget. Our guests tonight are Mr. Burton Colder and Brad Colder. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. What I'd like to do, we're going to hit some of the high spots. This document's about 40 pages, 45 pages long. And there's all the schedules that are required to be presented, has been prepared by your staff, headed by Karen, to get this together. And so what we're going to do here tonight is hit some of the high spots that you may have. If you have any questions, feel free to interrupt either myself or Brad when we're presenting things, and we'll certainly try and discuss those at that time. What I'd like to do is to start on page 1, which is on the budget message. And just to kind of give you some high spots of what's in this budget for 2023 year end, okay? As Ray indicated, we have the estimated numbers which are required and are presented in here. And I think it's going to be asked of you at the regular meeting to go ahead and adopt that as your final amended budget, and so on. But let's talk about this. This is what's in this budget document for next fiscal year beginning on Friday. Under governmental funds, it says expenditures have been increased or decreased over or under the previous year on a line item basis for each revenue source and expenditure function. Salaries for most employees, excluding police, have been adjusted for a 3% merit raise to be allocated to employees at the discretion of each department head. Police salaries have been increased by 3% in accordance with the police department pay plan. The total amount budgeted for the merit pay raises and pay scale increase included in next year's budget is $175,300. So, any questions on this?
Mr. Burton,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to propose to put the police chief and the mayor there 3% also.
Okay.
I don't know where we do it exactly, but
It'll have to be put into the general fund. That's where those expenditures are paid, Ray. And, what we can do, obviously, we're going to take these and maybe make a list of any other changes that we may have. And if the council approves this, obviously, we can't take any action right now. But when we go into our meeting at that time, I think it would be prudent to make the suggestion to adopt those ordinances subject to the changes that y'all agree on need to be made. Okay?
thank you.
So that's the first item, I guess, is an increase for the mayor and the chief of 3% as well. All right. Okay. Let's go to page 2 and we'll talk about the capital outlay request. It says the capital outlay, the budget includes capital outlay request of numerous items listed on pages 4 and 5 of the budget document totaling $10,051,890. And we're going to look at this on pages 4 and 5 in just a moment. But before we do that, let me go ahead and finish up with the budget message. The utility fund, it says water and sewer rates were increased by 5% and 10% respectively for the fiscal year 2023. Effective 7/1/22, that's for the 5% increase. And then again on 1/1/23, a 10% increase, okay? And you've been doing this, I know, for the last year or two, am I correct? three. This is the third year that we're doing this, and you're going to see in a moment when Brad goes over the numbers, it's really beginning to pay off, that you're getting to where this utility fund or utility operations are pretty much, from a cash flow standpoint, breaking even, or sometimes we should be shortly breaking even on this. And we had told you this last year, I think, when we did the audit, and we figured it'd be about 18 months, and I think it's going to be holding true to that, and Brad will go over that in just a minute. So let me just go over the rates. The garbage rates will be increased by 5% effective 7/1/22. Obviously, we've had a 5% increase from the provider. Didn't that take place in April? You had an increase. We're going to make that effective on July the 1st to basically just recoup that 5%. And that's what you've been doing in the past. Revenues for residential rates were budgeted with the rates effective as indicated in the chart below. Now let's look at that. In the water department, the base rate is $11.24 for the first 2,000 gallons. And again, this is going to be effective starting on Friday. Then the per gallon, or the consumption rate, is going to go to $3.90 per 1,000 gallons over the base rate of 2,000. Okay. And then if you look at the water going down a little bit further, effective on January the 1st, the base rate's going to go from $11.24 up to $11.80 for the first 2,000 gallons. And then the consumption rate's going to go up 20 cents per thousand, from $3.90 per 1,000 gallons over the base rate to $4.10. Everybody sees that. Okay. The sewer department, up at the top on the effective rates on July the 1st, are going to be $9.70 for the first 3,000 gallons. And then the consumption rate is going to be $4.36 per 1,000 gallons over the base rate. Then effective January the 1st of 23, the base is going to go from $9.70 up to $10.67 for the first 3,000 gallons. Remember, you're going to see this in just a moment. You're further behind in trying to catch up on the sewer than you've been on the water. And then the consumption rate is going to go to $4.80 per 1,000 gallons, up from $4.36 per 1,000 gallons. Okay. Any questions here? And this has been started, I'm going to say eight years ago. I think y'all started the process of trying to get these departments on a profitable footing, and we're slowly getting there. But you can see the end now, at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. Any questions on this? Okay, hearing none, let's go to pages 4 and 5, and we'll look at the capital outlay request that's included in this budget document. There's a lot of items here. I mean, with $10 million, you're talking about 53 different items that are listed. And what Karen has done is she's listed the project cost, and then what she anticipates, or what the administration anticipates, is going to be spent during this current fiscal year. Some of them are the same amounts, obviously. Others, sometimes there's a total project cost, but it's projected that you won't be able to start that project until maybe next fiscal year. So there's nothing being spent this year on it, but it's clearly indicated on here. And like I said, please stop me, or if you have any questions on any particular items. One, like number 3, for example, under the item number 3, it says council chambers / police building, estimated cost $4 million. Well, all we're spending, or estimated to spend this year, is $330,800. So I think you can clearly see what's happening there is what you're projecting that you're going to spend next fiscal year. Public safety, another fairly big item, is we're looking at the Tahoes, 6 Chevrolet Tahoes, and plus some equipment of $296,000. Now, if you look at the budgeted cost for next year, it is budgeted next year. And I think we're going into a lease program with those. So basically, it's a lease type purchase, but anyway, it has to be shown as a capital item. And so it's $296,000. All of that is estimated to be spent next year. The next category, of course, there's some cameras, and there's some annual installment on some cameras, 3 of them, and that's $88,000 within the police budget as well. On the fire department, a total of only $30,000 there, basically a roof on the on the fire station. The streets and drainage to be spent basically with general fund revenues, you're talking about $260,000, and there's 5 projects listed there. Some drainage projects mainly. Total, that's gonna be spent from general fund, as you can see, the total estimated cost is 4.7 million, but we're only gonna spend about 1.1 million during this next fiscal year. Now we start with capital projects. Now here's some very big items. Bernard Road, number 15, you can see a total cost of $3,070,000. We're estimating that you're gonna spend that amount in this next fiscal year for Bernard Road. And that's Highway 182 to Highway 90. Going on down, number 17, there's quite a few items here on the Main Street improvements projects, phases 1, 2, and 3. Looks like the total cost here of this would be 9.6 million. And looks like we're gonna estimate that we're gonna spend about 3.1 million this next year. Now you can see phases 1 and 2, they're pretty much, I think, reaching the end, Ray, if I'm correct on that. You can see it's a total of 2.3 and then $3 million estimated cost for 1 and 2, but we're only spending the remaining, what we estimate, 396,000 for phase 1 and 250,000 to complete phase 2. So the bulk of this is going to be spent into phase 3, but we won't be complete by the end of the fiscal year. Am I correct?
And just to be clear, it's phase 1 that's ending completion. Phase 2 is utility relocations that our Public Works Department will be
Okay.
handling, which is a beginning of that project. Phase 3, we have some state capital outlay money, right sizing money that is pointed to that area. So phase 3, the first part, which is the covering of the ditches and a parking lane to be added, is what you see funded here. We feel like that's what can be done in this next fiscal year. So on the right side is the state capital outlay money, or the right sizing money, and on the project you mentioned before, which was, I'm sorry, I lost track of it.
Bernard
South
Road.
Bernard
Yeah.
also had an indicator on the right side of state capital
State
outlay money, which I'm sure will appear elsewhere in the budget as income.
That's correct.
Thank you.
It shows as a revenue source, and it shows as an expenditure for the capital. That's how it's being presented.
The footnote is there just to make it
That is
clear.
right. Okay, moving on down, I mean, like, item 20 is a fairly large item, 746,000 on La Nouvelle Road reconstruction. And I think that's a joint project between the city of Broussard, the parish of Lafayette, and the city of Lafayette. And I think y'all gonna control the project, or run the project, so to speak, and they're gonna reimburse you for those items. Am I correct? And Karen and I talked about it, the way she handled it in the budget. So, that is being done properly. Okay, any additional questions on, I guess, page 4? Anything?
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
I see street overlays, 300,000. That doesn't seem like as much as we've been spending on street overlays, if I can remember correctly.
It doesn't, David. The budget that we're ending now, we had I think a round number of $1 million in street overlays, and then the council approved adding the, 250,000 or so for, Main Street, which, on phase 3. We had not, that was a inflated number. That is not what's usually in our budget. Mel sort of gave us this target. We do not have a list of streets yet, but something to be in that line item, so it wouldn't be a shocker once that street list is developed and the council decides what to approve.
So it's possible it could grow and have to be amended during the year, right?
It could be, but some of our projects are being handled in other ways. Like La Nouvelle is absolutely a street that needs to be overlaid, but it's a specific project. It's not just an overlay. It's a little more complex than that. So this would be the normal go in and add a 1 inch of asphalt or 2 inches of asphalt, just maintenance money. And generally, every year, the council works with Mel's department to create the list. The top priorities are picked, and then it comes down to dollars and cents sometimes. What
Right.
can we afford to do, and how far can we get down on the list?
Okay. Any additional questions? Okay, let's go to page 5, and we're gonna conclude on the capital projects. You got a lot of road projects here as well. You can see Garber Road Bridge, for example, number 24, it's estimated to cost $925,000, but we're not spending any of that. We're kind of putting it on the radar screen, but it's not estimated to be done next fiscal year. So I just want to make that perfectly clear. Items 28, 29, and 30. You have the BO lift station, the Main Street lift station rehab, the Sugar Trace South lift station rehab. And those items, you can see 200,000, 200,000, and 360,000, a total of $760,000. Those sewer improvements are estimated to take place in this next fiscal year. And then the grand total for what we call capital projects funds that's being funded in those projects, as you can see, the total estimated cost is 33 million here, but we're spending 8.7 million estimated that we're going to be able to complete next year. Sales tax funds has a minimal amount here of $20,000 in the next budget. Total governmental funds estimated that we're going to spend $9,875,000 in this next fiscal year for that. And that's kind of included in the budget message. And then you have some utility fund items, $38,000. You can see they're identified there. And then various items for the Parks and Rec Fund at our park here. And estimated cost of all those is like $543,000. And what we have in the budget is identified as $138,575. And here's your total number that I mentioned in the budget message. Total capital outlay estimated going to be $10,051,000 for this current fiscal year that we're beginning on Friday.
Burton, if I could add a comment
Sure.
on item 51, a PA system for the park. I had mentioned to at least some of the councilmen previous to this that Jamie Abshire, our park director, had been working on a PA system that would include our baseball fields only. And Jamie was going to come forward to the council with the additional costs if we had included soccer. Jamie's done a very good job of negotiating with the company and got them to include soccer in that cost at no additional cost. So the package would be baseball and the soccer, all of our three pods together. So a much better system for us. We were trying to save some money by possibly parting it out, but they reworked something and now it would be a
So
complete system.
70,000 will handle soccer and baseball.
Correct, yes. And Jamie can give a deeper explanation in that if the council so chooses to have him brought up before the vote. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments relative to the capital outlay?
I have a question for the park director, Mr. Abshire. The items you're looking at, the pitching lanes, is that modifying the bullpens?
No, sir.
That's not what that is? What is that?
This is just protection on our turf that is there.
We need to add a microphone. Yes, thank you.
No, this is just protection for the pitching lanes that we have already there, to where when we have these multiple tournaments, multiple teams coming in, when it puts wear and tear on the surface, instead of it putting wear and tear on the surface, it's going to be wear and tear on these pitching lanes.
So the pitching lanes are the bullpens. Is that the
No.
same thing?
No, sir.
That's
The bullpens on the side, that the pitching lanes is going to go on the field, and girls softball is wherever
Okay.
they drag their foot and the cleats drag through.
So on the mound?
Yes,
Okay, okay.
yes,
Just want to get some clarification on that.
yes, sir.
The second issue, the Arsenal Park AstroTurf, it's not a big line item. Where are you putting that down at?
That is kind of on the back burner now, just until we
Okay.
get some kind of clear idea of what's going on. What do we see Arsenal Park looking like?
Gotcha.
That's kind of put to the side. Obviously, we're still going to be out there. Yeah,
That item is not funded currently in the budget.
right. No, but we still going to be out there. We're going to be doing lawn maintenance and everything. But if we're going to seek money into that, it's going to take quite a bit of money.
So the $3,000 is going to what right now?
That's nothing.
Councilman, it's not funded. It
It's
was a
not funded.
suggestion for the budget, but it's
Okay, we're not
funded
gonna
at
spend it.
zero.
Okay.
Yeah, I have not, we have not requested anything to be
Okay.
out at Arsenal Park until we got a final idea of what's happening out at Arsenal.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay, hearing none, I'm gonna turn it over to Brad. He's gonna go over the utility operations and the park operations, and then I'll come back and we'll conclude on the budget.
Okay, good evening, council and mayor. If we could, let's flip to page 24 in the budget document. And what we're gonna do is go through each individual department within the utility fund and then hit the utility fund as a whole final, and then we'll go over the park. So on page 24 is the garbage department. You can see we have the 2021 actual audited numbers. The middle column is your estimated numbers for the fiscal year about to end this week. And then the far right column is your 2023 estimated budget number. And you can see total operating revenues for the garbage were 1,376,000 in 21, a slight increase to 1,415,000 in the current year. And for the budget year, the 5% that was mentioned in the budget message to 1,486,000. You have just a few expenditures listed here, but in total for 21, 1,298,000, an increase in the current year to 1,386,000. And then another slight increase to 1,428,000, mainly because of the increase in providing the garbage service. But you can see the bottom line, each year, you want to basically break even or have a little bit of a profit within garbage, which is exactly what you guys are doing. In 2021, you had a profit of about $79,000. This year, we're expecting to be $29,000, $30,000, and for the budget year, $58,000, $59,000. So really, garbage is operating exactly as you want it to be. Any questions on page 20? If there's none, let's just flip back to page 23. And page 23 is going to be sewer. And looking at the revenues, you guys have been increasing the rates, as my dad alluded to in the budget message, and you can see that it's working. In 2021, the revenues are $1,071,000. The current year, we're up to $1,229,000. And for the budget year, a shade under 1.4 million at 1,391,000. So you need to increase these revenues because look at where we are on expenditures. Total expenditures in 2021, 2,289,000. The increase of 2,413,000. And it's worth pointing out for both 2022 and 23, it's about 8 or 10 from the bottom, but materials and supplies. Look at this number in 2021, it's about 151,000. Look at the increase that we're seeing for the current year and budgeting for 2023, 294,000 for the current year and budgeting 295. In conversations with Karen and the mayor during the exit conference we had, this is mainly due to inflation. I mean, that's pretty much what's going on here is everything that you're out there buying just costs more. And you can see it right here in materials and supplies virtually doubling from where it was in 21 into the current year and the next budget year. So that's the main reason for the increase from 21 to 22. As I said, 2.3 million up to 2.4 million in the current year. But we do hold the expenses, for the current year at 2.4 million. So that's good. Get to the operating loss. All 3 years it's a loss, but the loss is decreasing, which is good. A loss of 1.2 million in 21, loss of 1,183,000 in the current year, and a loss of about $1 million for the budget year. But the largest expense on the page is about 6 or 7 from the bottom is depreciation. My dad alluded to this as well. During the budget message, you guys are getting closer to what we call cash neutral. And so you can see in 2021, 959 of depreciation, operating loss of $1.2 million. So you're give or take 300,000 off of being cash neutral. Here in the current year, 950 of depreciation, about $1.2 million. So we're about 250 off of being cash neutral here. Then for the budget year, 950 of depreciation, again, $1,025,000 of loss. So that gaps down to about 75,000. So we're getting closer in sewer. When we're going to flip over to water, it's a better situation than sewer. So we're getting closer in sewer. But the good thing is here, you're trending in the right direction. The plan you guys have is working. Any questions on page 23? If there's no questions, let's keep with our trend and flip on back to page 22. As we just saw with the sewer department, you're going to see the same trend in the revenues. If you're increasing the rates, you would expect to see your revenues go up, and of course they do. In 2021, revenues came in right at $2 million. A healthy increase in the current year to almost 2.4 million, and budgeting a shade over 2.5 million for 2023. Looking at the expenditures in 2021, almost 2.6 million. Quite the increase, though, in 2022 to $3 million. Couple of reasons for this. Let's take a look at engineering fees. It's toward the middle of the page. You spent $23,000 in 2021. You spent over $250,000 in 2022. This was some water relocation expenses that you guys had. It's about $182,000 if I recall, but this was totally reimbursed. So while you're seeing the expense here, you will reimburse the full amount of the 182. It's not reflected on this particular page, but I did want to point that out. And you can see in the budget year, we're projecting about $90,000 to be spent on this line item.
Brad,
Yes,
Brad,
sir.
if I could add some, Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, but that line item on engineering is the, Ambassador Caffrey water line?
The Highway 90 water line.
Highway
relocation.
90 and Ambassador Caffrey,
Correct.
right? So, I know the council would remember, but not long ago, we reported that, there was a potential $4 million of expense because of the Highway 90 upgrade. Broussard had a water line and DOTD's right away, a 12-inch main, that they were requiring us to move at our expense, but we were able to get relief from a DOTD capital outlay project. So the state is actually going to move that water line based on the plans that we provided through Como Engineering. And we learned recently, we requested that they also help us with the engineering fees, and they agreed. So they had enough money in their budget to do the project and give us a positive reimbursement on this engineer fee. So it'll balance out at another point in the
Yes, sir.
budget.
I'll point it out.
I just wanted to be clear about that. Thank you.
And let's see, so like we pointed out, back to page 22, we just talked about the engineering fees. I wanted to look at materials and supplies here as well. Okay, materials and supplies, we spent $243,000 in 21. Look at the increase in 2022 up to $420,000. We're budgeting the same approximate number, $420,000 for 2023. Again, this is due to inflation. It's not that you're buying a lot more things. Things you're buying are more expensive, as we're all experiencing as we buy things. Right below that, it's worth pointing out while we're in the detail, is depreciation. You can see in 2021, $430,000. So if you look to the very bottom line, a loss of $560. So we're cash negative in 2021, about $130,000. For the current year, depreciation still that same $430. The expenditures increases we talked about up to $652. But for those increases, we'd have been close to cash neutral in 2022. But look at where we are for the budget year. Depreciation running approximately $435,000. Operating loss of $357. So this is the first time I think since we've ever been presenting with you guys that any department, but other than garbage, but water or sewer is going to be cash positive for the budget year 2023. So that is exceptional news. You got to be really proud of it because we've been working for this, and my dad pointed out, 8 or 9 years. And to finally see it come to fruition is really great. Any questions on page 22? If there's no questions, why don't we flip 2 back to page 20? Bring everything together in the utility fund and look at it as a whole. We just went over the different revenues, and in every department they were increasing, so that's what we're going to see when we bring it together. 2021 revenues, $4,483,000, approximately 10% more than that increase in 2022 to a shade over $5 million, and then another $400,000 increase for the budget year to $5.4 million. So nice increase in the revenues, which is what you need. Moving on to the expenditures for some of the ones that we talked about, the increases, total expenditures in 2021, almost $6.2 million. They increase when you combine everything to $6.8 million for 2022 for the various reasons that we talked about, materials and supplies with inflation, the engineering fees. These are the main drivers of that increase. And then they come down a little bit for the budget year to $6.7 million. Operating loss in 2021, $1.7 million. The biggest expense on the page, it's about 8 or 9, 10 from the bottom. Depreciation, $1,389,000. It's almost $1.4 million for 2021. So we're cash negative, give or take $300,000 in 2021. For the current year, we have an operating loss of $1,807,000, same $1.3 million, still cash negative for the utility fund. But look at where we get to for 2023, the budget year. So the utility fund as a whole, when you combine everything, operating loss of $1,323,000 is budgeted. Depreciation of $1,386,000. So the utility fund as a whole would be cash positive, give or take $60,000. So again, we had that in water, cash positive for the first time. The profit you're making in sewer, the decrease in the loss in sewer and the profit you're making in water, and you get to this point here. So when we present the audit, you won't be cash neutral in 22. We're not projecting that, but in 23, you will be. So as my dad pointed out, 18 months. from now. So this is really, really great news. This is the first, we've been saying it's coming, the first one to stand up here and say this, but you guys have stayed at it, and the numbers bear this out. So this is really great. To the mayor's point, if there's no questions on 20, I wanted to point out on page 21, we have some non-operating revenues and expenditures at the top. There's really not much to say about this. You can see there's not a lot of variance, and it's really not big numbers. But the capital contributions toward the middle of the page, you can see we had 95,000 of capital, 93,000 of capital contributions in 21, but the 182,000, that's that reimbursement for the engineering fees that we talked about a little earlier within water. We have to show it as a capital contribution here. So we want to show that revenue coming back in for the expense that we showed in the water department. Any questions on anything I went over on any particular department or the utility fund as a whole? If there's not, why don't we go to page 25? And page 25 is Parks and Rec. So this is including St. Julian and Arsenal. I don't think it's worth it to look at them individually because Arsenal is so minimal. But looking at page 25, you can see total revenues. And look, there's quite the list here in front of you. If you have a question, please, you can stop me and I can try and answer it. I'm sure Karen can answer it. 2021 revenues, 710,000. For the current year, we're estimating revenues at 651,000. And then a nice increase for the budget year to 725,000. So revenues are moving in the right direction, at least from 22 to 23. The expenses begin here on page 25 and they proceed on to 26. But one thing I want to point out before we move to 26, 4 from the bottom is going to be depreciation. And you can see that's running right at about 950,000 each of the years in front of you. And that's going to become relevant when we have a little conversation on page 26. So the expenses continue, and you can see in total, the expenditures, 2.6 million in 21. They stay flat for 2022, which is good. And there's some movement. I mean, even if you looked at that last line item, security police officer full-time, we had that in 2021, but that's not the way it's being handled anymore. From what I understand from the meeting, it's basically a roaming officer. He'll make a pass about every hour or so. And so you don't have that $82,000 expenditure in 22 and 23 that you had in 21. But saying that to say that those expenditures are essentially flat from 21 to 22, and then you have an increase to 2.8 million for the budget year 2023. And you're left with operating losses every year, 1.9 million in 21, up to 2 million in the current year, and a little over 2 million, almost 2.1 million in 2023. So remember when we were on page 25, about 950 in depreciation. So when you add that back here, again, this is not the utility fund where I'm going to stand in front of you and say at some point we're cash neutral. I mean, that's not what the park is supposed to do. But it is worth pointing out that you're essentially cutting in half these operating losses with depreciation. Okay, so it's worth pointing out. And then we're not going to go over it in detail, but you do bring in roughly 3.6 million on your 2011 recreational sales tax. So it's very difficult when you're looking at this to say, okay, the park has this operating loss if you add back depreciation, but what other impact is it having on sales tax in general within the community? It's having a positive one. I can't stand up here and tell you to what degree, but it is having a positive one. Any questions on page 25 or 26 or anything the utility fund that I didn't go over?
Brad, just to mention that the revenues that we're looking at for 2021 and compared to 2022, in 2020, due to COVID, we did not have leagues operate in the same timelines. Those leagues were pushed into 21. So we have double revenues shown for 21 currently. Karen can correct me if I have this wrong. But there was shut down. We didn't want to cancel leagues if we didn't have to. We were able to have leagues. That was not the norm, but we were able to have more than one league. 2021 back to center, back to normal. And then now we're projecting for the 2022. So the real budgetary hit would have shown in 20 of a lot of the programs being canceled or whatnot. And we were able to make up some of that activity in 21, but now, this past year, things operated pretty much the way they normally will in the timeframes.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the clarification. I should have said that. Any other comments? Thank you, and I'll pass it back to my dad.
Okay, we've looked at the utility operations, we looked at the capital outlay, and like I said, there's all the funds all broken out here. But I'd like to go to the consolidated, which is on page 3. It brings it all together. And we'll make some analogies and take a look at this and see, if there's any comments. Obviously, we want to hear those, and any questions, we certainly want to try and answer those. On page 3, beginning with the revenues, and again, the same 3 columns that Brad was just pointing out, the actual numbers per the audit in 21, the estimated numbers, which is going to be asked for you to adopt as your amended budget, final amended budget for this current fiscal year, and of course, 23 being the budget for next year. Look at tax revenues. You have the sales tax revenues of all the funds, $17.6 million. That's sales tax. You don't have any property tax here, but you do have some franchise taxes included in this. In 2022, it looks like the tax revenues are going to jump up to $20,238,000. So that's approximately $2.6 million of increase. And that percentage, 12% on the increase? I'm just doing it in my head, but
I know it is $1 million increase in each sales tax,
in each one.
in our 1 cent.
Right. So, and it's $1 million on about 6.3 million, I think is what it was. It went to
Right.
7. So, anyway, about 13%, let's say, increase. Now look at 2023. The number is projected by the administration to be 19,556,000. And they're projecting flat on the taxes, which is very conservative. We all hope, and I think it'll be higher than that, but it remains to be seen with this economy the way it is. I think it's probably a safe bet, Ray, to hopefully it'll come in higher than this. We all hope that.
And we generally have this discussion around this time of the year, but I think where the council has been traditionally comfortable is that we just assume what we have this year. Some cities I know, because I'll have these discussions with them, that will assume a 10% increase every year. That's fair, if that's what they, what they
Right.
choose to do. But projecting flat numbers puts us in a conservative position. If we earn more, great.
That's
If we
great.
don't, we're in a conservative position and we don't have to start backpedaling on the budget.
Correct. So I definitely agree with that kind of philosophy, being conservative with it. I think is a good approach. And we all feel it's going to come in higher than that, but be that as it may, let's see what happens. Licenses and permits, $1,903,000 last year, $1,858,000 this year, $1,875,000 for the budget year. Intergovernmental revenues, $1.3 million last year, $1.2 million this year, $9 million next year. 2 big items. The ARPA monies of about $4 million is going to be shown in the revenues for next fiscal year. We've received 1/2 of those payments. We'll get the other half, I think, in August or so, which will be obviously in this fiscal year. But you received it. You already have half the money, but you didn't spend it. So until you allocate it for spending, which you're going to do next year, is when it's recognized. So that's $4 million. State funding, which is also another $4.5 million. So that's the bulk of what we have here. That's $8.5 million of the 9.1 million. That's accounted for here with some of the state funding that's coming in, and we know we're getting it. Charges for services, Brad just went over that for the utility operations, the water, sewer, and garbage, 4.4 million last year, 5,026,000 estimated for this year, and 5.4 million for the budget year. On the Parks and Rec, Brad also went over that, 710,000, I should say, for this current year, last year. Current year, 651,497, and for the budget year, 725,000. Fines and forfeits, 496,000 last year, 532,000 for the current year, and 533,000 for the budget year. Now, under miscellaneous was 307,000 last year, sort of a catch-all. This year is 677,000. Brad just talked about that water line reimbursement. That's included in there, as well as this year you already received it, $100,000 or so of LWCC reimbursements. Okay, and you always get a credit. It varies. This year was a good year. I don't know, what does it normally run, Karen?
Generally, it's anywhere between 60 and 80, but it fluctuates. But
Yeah.
this year it was over
It was
100.
really good, and we have it in hand.
But actually, the capital contribution from the state is going to be down at the bottom. this number includes the contribution from Safe Source for reimbursement for half of the water line. That was
water
an
line.
agreement.
Okay, that's
that
what I
we
had made a note of, but it's not, I see that down there.
Yeah.
Right, the 213 that Brad alluded to, we talked about, is down at the bottom.
Correct.
This is a different reimbursement.
Right.
But that's $331,000 that we've identified that's extra in this current year, and you have it in hand, so that's why it had to be shown. Next year projected to be 233,000, pretty much a normal year in miscellaneous. So total operating revenues for the city of Broussard, $26.8 million last year. This year forecasted to be $30,199,000. And for the budget year, look at this, $37,452,000. Kenny and I were kind of reminiscing, I guess, way back when you first started. You said you can remember the budget you thought was 5 million or less. And look at what we are now at $37 million. You know, your police budget this year is, I think, 4 million. So it's pretty much your total budget that it was way back when you started. So, anyway, it's great. It's good news. And, you've experienced some growth, but, you're funding things to improve the community, and that's good. Okay, let's look at how the monies have been spent or will be spent in next fiscal year. General government, last year we spent 2.6 million. This year forecasted to be 2,442,000. And in the budget year, 2,522,000. Now, based on what Ray, if the council approves this, what you suggested earlier, that 2,522,000 will change for the proposed increase for the chief and the mayor, if that is accepted by the council. So that's where that number is going to go, Ray. And it's going to be in the general fund, but it'll flow through here. Economic development, 341,000 last year, spent 409,000 for the current year, estimated to be 444,000 for next year. Public safety, police department, last year we spent 3,400,000, this year 3,800,000, and for the budget year, $4,286,000. I think it does include some new employees too for the police department, Ray. I had made a note about that when we had our exit meeting yesterday.
It includes 2 patrol and 1 detective
Right,
position.
so there's 3 positions that's included in that, and that's why you see an increase here. The fire department, 1,416,000 last year, 1,550,000 this year, and 1,781,000 for next year. I think we're adding 24 hours at one of the stations, which is 1 position. So 24-hour coverage at one of the stations. Streets and drainage, 3.7 million last year, 3.4 million this year, and 3,459,000 for the budget year. Culture and recreation, only $5,000. And again, this is just other items, mainly for culture. It was 5,000 last year, 19,000 for the current year, 19,500 for the budget year. Debt service for principal retirement. This is on the general obligation debt. This is not the utility debt. Principal is $1,068,000 last year and $640,000 of interest. This year's forecasted to be $1,211,000 of principal and $628,000 of interest. For the budget year, $1,297,000 of principal and $601,000 of interest. Capital outlay, $2,252,000 at this line item last year, estimated to spend $7.5 million this current year as an amended budget. Next year forecasted on the general obligation items, not the capital outlay for the utility and so on, and the park, it's $9,085,000, and that matches the capital outlay request. For sports complex, it's estimated we're going to spend 2.6 million, or we did spend 2.6 million last year. Estimated we're going to spend 2,665,000 this year and 2,809,000. Brad alluded to that earlier for next budget year. Utility fund expenses was 6,183,000. They jumped up to 6,833,000, and for the budget year, $6,736,000. And Brad, we went over the details of that just a moment ago. Total operating expenses for the city. Last year, as we said, we brought in revenues of 26.8 million. This year, last year, the expenditures were 24.2 million. Operating income at that line item was a surplus of 2,582,000. For 2022, that we spent 30,478,000. The bulk of the increase is in capital outlay. That left us with the deficit of $278,000 at this line item. Now look at next year. Again, spending $33 million this year. Looks like for the budget year, we should have an operating surplus at this line item of $4,407,000. Then you have a lot of other items that are listed here, like non-operating revenues and or expenses. The bulk of this is the utility interest expense. And you can see the total nets there, basically about $1 million each year. Then you have income before capital contributions and transfers. As you can see, $1.5 million, and then a loss in the estimate for this current fiscal year of $1.3 million, and 3.6 million surplus for next year. The very bottom line, and this is where I want to go with it, is net change in fund balance, which is the third to last line item, okay? That is the total loss or profit or surplus, I should say, for each respective year. That's after capital outlay, and that's including revenues from grants. So last year, we ended up at $1,652,000. This year, projected, we're going to be at $639,000 deficit for the year when you take it all into consideration. What happens is you issue bonds or you get grants, but you don't spend the money till the next year. And this is what happens. This is a year where we spent more, some of the previous year monies that we had gotten in order to accomplish what we wanted with projects. So we ended up at $639,000 deficiency. But look at the budget year, it looks like the surplus here would be $3.8 million. Now, let me tell you where I'm going with this, and I think, Karen, you handed it all out. There's a page that was presented to you. It says summary of net operating surplus, and we generally do this at the time of the audit, and we do have the audited numbers on here. On this page, you have 5 years, basically 6 years, 6 years of numbers. You have 4 years of actual audited numbers, and those you've seen in the past. And then in 22, we have the budget, amended budget, and in 23, the budget. So I'll start with those numbers. Let's look at 21, that $1,652,000. You can see we're starting with that. The $639,000 deficit, we're starting with that number. And in 23, $3.8 million surplus. But we've got to take off all these grant monies, these one-time monies that we get, and so on. So that's why those numbers are shown. This grants, capital contributions, and any debt that you may have issued. We did have some debt in previous years. But you can see the respective numbers in each year. Look at 21. It netted out to $348,000. 22 was $1,650,000 that we've got to subtract. And in 23, it's $8.8 million that's being subtracted. Okay? Now, but to that, let's take off the capital outlay. Let's take off the one-time type of expenditures. And the total capital outlay, you can see in 21 is $2.3 million. That left you with an actual operating surplus. So from an operational standpoint, in 21 from the audit, we ended up, or this city ended up with a surplus of $3.6 million operational wise. Now look at the number for 22. It might have scared you when you said, man, we're in the red this year. Well, you're not really in the red. When you take all of that out, you had a surplus of $5,185,000. And look at the budget year. The surplus is $4,122,000 forecasted. So it's very good budget. It's concerned. We already talked about 23 with no forecasted increase in sales tax. So whatever we get on top of that's going to even be better. So very sound financial situation here. You can see back in 18 and 19, we had surpluses of $2.7 and $2.3 million respectively. 2020 it went up right at $1 million, but last year it jumped up to 3.6, forecasted to be 5.2, and then for next year, $4.1 million. Any questions here? Any comments that you may have?
I'd like to
Yes, sir.
question Mel and Walter. Excuse me. As far as our drainage projects that we're going after, do we have engineering fees and material fees to cover, is it Bayou LaSalle you want to clean? Cooley Fortune. And, do we have the money in this budget for what you have planned?
Yes, we do, David. We did budget to rent equipment to do the Cooley Fortune project. And, yeah, the crossings that we'll run into. And we also have, money budgeted for other, repairs and maintenance for other smaller projects that we do throughout the year.
And Cooley,
Not that we haven't amended any budget, but I mean.
Cooley Fortune's the biggest drainage project probably in the history of the city, and we're doing it. Mel's gonna start downstream and start working his way up. And it's gonna be a multi-year project, but in my lifetime, I don't remember it ever being clean, so.
David, you did mention and crossings, but just to be clear, Cooley Fortune is very long. It crosses Main Street, it crosses St. DePorce, it crosses Morgan Street, crosses Highway 90. If we start changing bridges and major crossings, we don't have money in the budget for that today. But minor crossings, we do. We're talking about clearing land, swabbing the canal, getting it.
It's stop it or slow it down from not being budgeted. So everything y'all want, what y'all think is, in the future is gonna be covered.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a multi-year project. Probably the biggest one on my mind right now is, and this is funded, is begin to work on Gulber Road outfall. That's kind of an important one right now. Arsenal is just gonna take a long time to get through. It's really long and it's overgrown. So first thing he's gotta do is get all the vegetation and trees and, yeah.
I believe a good way to state it is they came up with a number to fund what they think they can accomplish in this budget year. That would be fair, Mel?
Any additional questions or comments or?
Bert, I'd like to go back to 25. I should have asked this when your son was up. On the concession fees, I'm assuming that's the revenue that we share with Bonton, correct?
Yes, they give us a percentage
It's
of,
10%.
Yeah.
I
that
think
right?
so.
So they generate over $760,000 in total sales. It's a good relationship with Bonton. But how are we confirming that that's what we get? Are you monitoring that every quarter or
They
every
send
month?
us an income statement as a support for their check that is generated from their accounting software. But I mean, I don't go audit their books, but I mean, they do send me financial support for what they're paying us.
Okay, is that what we should be doing, Burton, in your
No,
opinion?
if
that-
you looking at this pretty much, I guess,
But
on
we're
a
not looking
weekly
at
basis.
receipts. We're not looking at receipts by any way, in any way.
No, but she's getting, I'm assuming that software generates.
They give us
It's
a
all
QuickBooks, like,
automated.
it's like a QuickBooks income
Yes.
statement
You
that they
comfortable,
use.
you comfortable with that?
Yes,
Like I said, it's been a good relationship, with Bonton.
yeah,
just
I
wanna-
don't have any concerns
Unless
about
you
what
would-
they're sending us.
Unless you would suspect something, Karen, then I would suggest, Kenny, that we don't need to do anything with it. If she's comfortable in what she's getting, and I'm sure she's monitoring it, if it fluctuates dramatically, maybe there's a question or two to be
Just for
asked.
checks and balances, I want
Yes.
to make sure, you're talking about almost $1 million here, total,
Right.
that we are monitoring.
And to be fair, we don't have to run a concession stand. We don't have the cost of running the concession stand.
Exactly.
We don't have the hassle of buying food, staffing it.
Exactly. They are a
and
third-party
all of that.
vendor, but they're generating, $800,000 a year
Correct.
in our park. So I just want to make sure we have checks and balances.
And I was just asking Jamie, but yeah, Bonton also does Youngsville's as
Yeah,
well. So their
yeah.
staff, like Karen says, they worry about the employees and all of that. You don't have any headache but to get you commission.
Oh, I have no question about their service.
No
I have
doubt
no-
about it. It's a
It's
good
just that
relationship.
from a financial accounting point of view, or we checking and having
Yeah.
checks and balances, we need to generating that much money gross.
Yeah. I agree.
So-
Ken. But she's monitoring from what she's
Okay.
telling me or what she's telling us here tonight. And if there's a fluctuation, I know they're gonna check
Yeah.
into it.
If you're comfortable, I'm good.
I'm good with it.
Mr. Abshire would like to make a comment.
And just to add to that, in the contractual agreement, the more they make, the bigger the percentage that they pay out to the city of Broussard as well. So, I mean, it is legit, and I mean, he's there. Once we hit the second tier, we get more percentage coming back to the city of Broussard.
I have no doubt about that. That's been a good arrangement. Thank you.
And Jamie, is that a similar arrangement to what we have in Youngsville as well? It is, okay. Figured it was, but just to verify.
Since we're on the topic of recreation, Karen, something that we talked about when we were putting the budget together is the refinance of one of our park bonds. Could you give the council just a brief statement about that?
So in this fiscal year 22, in July, we refunded the 2012 rec bonds. So I think we paid those off in 2042 or 2045, something like that.
Okay.
We experienced a $1.4 million savings, so we will see an annual savings of somewhere between $80,000 and $90,000 a year. The original projection was anywhere between 750 and a million, 750,000 to a million in savings. And when the actual refunding and the sale of the bonds took place, it was a $1.4 million savings.
Very good timing because things have changed quite a bit since
Yes,
that.
we would never see those savings right now.
Right, you know, you came up with the plan, the council approved the action, and it's paying dividends for the city.
And if you remember, it got postponed several times because we would get it ready to sell, the interest rates would drop. We'd get it ready to sell, the market would go crazy. So on our one and only attempt, we did way better than we ever anticipated we could have.
Yeah, to go from an estimate of, you said 700 to maybe
To a million,
900,000, we did $1.4 million in total savings over the life of that issue. That's fantastic, because like you said, Ray, there's no way you would get that today, and probably not for the foreseeable future. So definitely the timing was perfect. So no question about that. And that took place in this current fiscal year.
It was in July of 2021.
That's correct. Okay, but you're gonna see the savings over the remaining life of that as
Correct.
well. So, okay, any additional items? Okay, hearing none, Ray, I think we're done. So I don't know if the public has any questions, but that's what this is all
So
about.
there is no action on this tonight. This was just a report. If there is any public comment, we can take it now. Tina, do you have a blue card?
No public comments.
Okay. All right. So, yes, we will need a move to adjourn.
I'll move. Second.
District 1,
Yes.
District 2.
Yes.
District 3,
Yes.
District 4,
Yes.
District 5.
Yes.
District 6.
Yay.
At large,
Yay.
motion carries.
All right. Thank you, Brad Burton. We are, about 12 minutes late for our actual council meeting. Want to make sure that our communications team has what they need to begin. You needed 2 minutes? You need 1 minute? Okay, please notify us when you're ready and we'll begin this, next meeting.
Broussard City.